Hello and welcome to Curiosity Cake. I'm your host Lee Delaney. This episode is the second of a two-part episode with award-winning technologist and online media personality Meredith Castles. In the first part, we explored Meredith's kinesthetic memory and her arts background. This time round, we're focusing more on her work in technology and how she combines arts with science to communicate science to the public. Before we get into it, I've also got a bit of news. This will be the last episode of Curiosity Cake for some time. I'm going to be taking a break from podcasting while I do some studying in artificial intelligence as well as my usual day job. I'm not sure yet if Curiosity Cake will be back as it is or in a new format or when that might be, but I do want to say a huge thank you to everyone who has supported the podcast over the year, from the amazing guests to everyone who has listened, and particularly to Helen who has put up with me complaining about sound quality. Now get yourself a cup of tea, grab a fork and dig into a slice of Curiosity Cake. Curiosity Cake. So Meredith, we've had a good chat there around your experience of memory, your experience in acting and theatre and movies. And you mentioned there that you had that deal with your mum that was around... You had to do your degree before you got into your kind of acting training and things, and you were studying archaeology and psychology. But we really started off talking about more things around technology. So let's get back to your kind of science path. So how is that kind of interwoven with your acting? Did you still maintain that interest in science, or did you do a period where you were just focused on the acting and then you came back to science later on?
Yeah, good question. So it was really a bit of a full circle thing. So, like I mentioned, I was interested in kind of acting and drama right from when I was a little kid, and at the same time as I was interested in science. So I'm literally talking about, mum giving me a chemistry kit and microscope as a kid and that sort of thing. I was interested in. I love the fact that I remember that someone asked me, could I please invent a heated toilet seat when I was a little kid. Thought there was going to be like an inventor or something. But yeah, around that time, and computer games, because obviously when I was growing up in the 80s, that was where we had that whole LucasArts adventure, and I got into computer games as a little kid. Some of my family were into computers at that point in time. So I had computers right from when I was a little kid. So it was kind of a thing, but I obviously never thought I was going to work in them or anything like that. It wasn't my thing. It was just, they were games, they were fun. And yeah, I mean, I guess there was also the whole movie tie-in where the movie The Net came out in the 90s and things, and she was Sandra Bullock was a programmer, and I like Sandra Bullock. So
who doesn't
there was
like
that
Sandra
tie-in.
Bullock?
Well, exactly. So Sandy B is she's a goddess. So but you know how it goes. But basically, but she was a programmer as well, and hey, great. I didn't really want to be a programmer.
Hang on a second. Let me clarify that. She was a programmer in the film The Net, wasn't she? She wasn't necessarily a programmer outside of that, was she?
Oh no. Yes, don't get me wrong.
I just wanted to check.
Won't clarify that one. Yeah, I've no clue. She's multi-talented. Maybe she is. I don't know. She might be. You never know. No, look, I don't think so. But she's just funny. But yeah, no. She was a programmer in The Net. But yeah, the Net was cool. I still like The Net. But I certainly, it was. Computers have been a part of my life all the way along, I guess. But one thing was they certainly weren't cool. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely at that time. It took a long time for that to happen, didn't
it? I to be completely honest, I still don't think they're cool. And this is something that really...
Oh, that's interesting, yeah.
Yeah, and this is something I'm working to change, of course, but I still don't think they're cool.
Are we differentiating between computers and computing and gaming? Or
really?
See it all as a package?
I think it's more of a package, and I'm going to be, again, hung, drawn, and quartered by everybody I work with, but that's okay. And I say it only because of the fact that in science communication now, which is what I work in quite heavily, the differentiation isn't made, and I think that's our fault. There's a lot to go into it, and what I'm saying is actually not true. I'm talking about the perception. So it's just as a perception, computing is not cool. You're talking about the STEM, STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and maths. Of all of them, realistically, technology is probably the least understood. People say engineering is the least understood.
I would say maths is the least understood.
Really? Maybe less defined. Let's call it less defined. Maybe, yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
I suppose people probably have an idea of what maths is, but whether or not they understand it or not, it's maybe a bit different.
I think that's true. Yeah, because I think STEM suffers from that all across the board, though. I think, yes, science is so massive. What does actually science mean? There's so many sciences, and technology, what the hell is that? And engineering, no one has a clue. Bridges? Is it bridges? Buildings? Something? Yeah.
So you think technology's bottom of the pile? Oh well, I think is your dog backing you up there?
I'm sorry. Yes. You said technology, right?
So you think technology's the bottom of the pile for kind of the general public and their view of it and understanding around it?
I think that, I think technology and engineering equally. I will have to say that because of the fact that we don't get the people into either one of those. And I will say women in particular, but we do have a fairly low intake on both engineering and maths in a lot of people in general. Unless people have grown up through, I see a lot. I will talk about the fact that I am talking through my experience down here in Tasmania, but I do also have a lot of friends and contacts in other universities and other parts of the world, and a lot of engineers, for example, will come through families of engineers, and a lot of scientists will come through families of computer scientists. You don't often see it as, oh, that sounds like a cool career, I might try that. Yeah,
and you're very heavily into like science communication and things. So when you're talking about, you've got kind of friends and things, in different kinds of universities, we're not quite on the anecdotal level here that you're talking about. Like this is something that you're very deep in and have really good knowledge of. Absolutely, yeah. So researchers as well as we've got some people who are not active researchers as well. So all pretty much across the globe, our fingers are in. That sounds terrible. Can you cut that out? Fingers in every pie.
Everybody, I was going to say fingers in everybody's pie. It sounds really bad. Oh, that's hilarious. The network is not huge. I mean, science communication is, thankfully getting a little bit more traction, but the women especially female female identifying science communicators, we aren't a particularly large group across the globe. So we do have, quite a good network. A lot of us know each other, or at least know of each other. So we're not, just because we are women science communicators, we're not just interested in women in science at all. We're interested. That's the other thing as well.
In science, and you're women, and there's some overlap there as well.
That's right. Exactly right. Oh God, you can sit here and unpack like a babushka doll exactly how many layers of that. Oh God, miscommunication and misinterpretation. That is. Wow.
So that's really interesting. How much do you think comes into that? But before we get into the kind of gender element of it, just that lack of interest in getting more into the STEM type fields, what do you think is causing that?
Oh wow, that's probably the number one question we get asked all the time. There's so many answers, and they're probably all right as well. The lack of role modeling, the lack of right role modeling, we should probably say appropriate role modeling. The public facing scientists, that's what I mean by role modeling. The lack of the right ones out there, or at least the lack of the breadth of the ones that are out there. The fact that we're not doing enough in terms of showing what the fields actually do. That's what I meant about the technology being uncool in general.
I have a friend who quite regularly posts on Facebook about how she doesn't need Pythagoras' theorem anymore in her life. And I always have to stop myself just getting into a rage about it. When I think about, you might not be directly using it, but it's all around you constantly.
Exactly. I was about to say, oh, someone's rolling in his grave. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, we're rolling. We're not certainly not going around in triangles then. But yeah. Love the angle. Yeah. So I'll leave the puns alone now. Yeah.
That's my audiogram snippet right there.
I love it. Technologist speaks about Pythagoras' theorem. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of I don't think there's actually an answer. I think there's an amalgamation of answers, and I think the general gist of it is that I worry that science communicators are getting too serious about this as well, and I've better clarify that too. I mean it is a serious thing we need to take seriously, but we also we run the risk of I guess portraying how do we put this? I guess we run the risk of portraying that we have too much of a problem rather than portraying the fun we're trying to put out there.
Mm-hmm.
How fun it is. Because if we portray too much of the negative of the fact that we have a problem, then rather than actually having a problem to solve, if you put the problem out there rather than having, you're the solution rather than we have a problem, then you're going to have the wrong message put out there, I guess. It becomes really an insurmountable problem. Yeah, I guess I speak to a lot of my colleagues, and this actually makes that part of my research as well, which is interesting. But I've spoken to a lot of them, and some of them are getting fatigued already on the message. They understand the importance of getting more women, especially, but more people through into technology, but are getting to a point now where they're going, we've lost sight of what the message is that we're trying to get out there to people, and that's a really interesting thing to say.
Yeah, I have this discussion quite regularly in my day job in data analysis, and I think about it as well in terms of my niece. She's in primary school, so she's like 10, she's still very young. But I have a real fear that if we make too much noise about saying, there's not enough representation of women in science, and if people then kind of take that and jump to maybe more extreme kind of feminist interpretations of that, of it's all discrimination, it's all bias, it's all patriarchy, the system's against you, that how is she then going to make the decision to go into science? You're just going to think, oh well, I'm not going to do that.
So you think that might be that she might think it's more of an insurmountable problem for her to solve? Is that what you...
Yeah, as in, that's potentially going to put people off. But obviously there's a tension there, like you're saying, of you need to do something about those issues if they're there. But like you're saying, if you're going out to the public with a message that like your area has this big giant problem, is that the best way to encourage people to come into it and change that problem?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to, I think, work with the science communicators themselves to make sure that they're not getting fatigued or losing sight of the message, I think. That's what I'm finding a lot, is that science communication itself needs to, especially in my field, I'm not speaking in general here, but in my field, needs to sort of repoint itself back to the original message. I'm finding that the message is getting lost a little bit. In terms of people getting angry and putting an angry message out there. I'm just wondering how much of that's actually being translated to the public.
I don't think you can't be on social media and not be angry. It seems to be you have to be angry about something.
True. There's a lot to be angry about.
It's what gets the views and things, isn't it?
Clickbait. Clickbait.
You've got to be smashing someone or destroying someone or something like that.
That's the Facebook. We can't be mad at you.
So what do you think the message then that you want to get out is? Or the message that you think kind of science communication should focus on?
in terms, and I'm going to sound very biased when I say this. I'm going to talk from a technology standpoint here. I have to
Yeah, sure.
because
No, that
that's
makes sense.
my field, obviously.
Yeah.
That's I think in terms of, I'm just coming back to the message I said about the fact that I think we have a long way to go before technology or communication or ICT is seen as cool, is the fact that you can definitely use a subfield like mine, human-computer interaction, to kind of achieve that. You're talking about technology design, novel technology design, bringing the humans back into that, using robotics, that sort of thing, to look at how we can interact and use technology, basically, and design better tech. You can use that to portray a very good, positive public image.
Yeah.
In terms of technology. If we can harness that and realize that, one of the messages, I guess, this is one of the messages I put forward as I won the 2020 ICT Student of the Year for Tasmania award last year. And one of the key messages I put across for that,
award-winning Meredith Castles.
Well, yeah, thank you. One of the messages I put across for that was that I really want to see us lose the terminology the binary terminology of hard and soft skills. I know that exists in other fields as well, but especially in technology, of hard and soft skills, because what's happening is we've only got something like 17% or something of people that come through, or even less than that, I think, of people that come through technology study are women, and everyone else is male. So what happens is that we call it losing women to the soft skills, is what we call it. So they lump all the human facing or anything to do with any business orientated technology or human design of technology or anything like that over to what we call soft skills, and anything related to programming or even cybersecurity, I guess, in a way, but that sort of is over both, is over into hard skills. And we lose the males to hard skills and the females to soft skills. Yeah. So we've already got an imbalance. And it's the craziest thing. There is literally nothing hard about programming. Oh my gosh. There's literally, I agree. See, she agrees with me. And there is literally nothing hard about there's literally nothing hard about programming, and there is literally nothing soft about dealing with humans at all.
There's certainly times when dealing with humans is hard.
Oh my gosh.
But
absolutely 100%.
Yeah. And I think you make a really, really interesting point, because actually I'm guilty of this. I make this separation in my job, and I manage people in data analysis as well, and I coach people and stuff, and I've had in my career, I've had that mix of, I've done those things that have been the traditional soft skills, and I've done things that have been the traditional hard skills. But actually, really in data analysis, you always have customers, you always have people you're producing your analysis for. The projects I have responsibility for, I'm managing people producing the work in those projects. So actually those two sides, the data skills, the people skills are just one whole package for me. I have to do all of those things, and it's the same, for the people in my team as they're producing the work. You can't produce the right kind of models, you can't produce the right kind of analysis and outputs unless you have a good relationship with your customer to talk through what it is they're actually looking for, what's the problem that they're trying to solve, and what kind of assumptions are involved in what you're building. So you have to have those skills to talk through that. And quite often, you're talking to people who don't have the technical skills that you have an understanding. So the communication around that then is even more important, because they're not going to give you very clear ideas of, oh yes, this is what I want. They're going to be able to tell you, well, this is the problem that we've got, so how can we find solutions to that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's some of the absolute hardest work I've ever done. Has to deal with no programming whatsoever, and finding out, does this look good? Is this what you do? Oh my gosh.
But yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting point. And certainly it seems a bit like psychology suggests that there is a bit of that kind of people and things split with the way that men and women would kind of choose what career paths to go down. But like
Mm-hmm.
you're saying, like science technology isn't necessarily an area where you're just working with the things all the time. You have to have all that range of skills. Because what, as you were talking about, what was really coming into my mind was some of the work around like disability and care for older people, and even like the kind of use of artificial intelligence in developing kind of programs that people can use for counseling and therapy and things like that. There's a whole area of technology that's being developed to support people.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's it's incredible. And this is the thing. I mean, human skills, or soft skills as they call them. I mean, human skills aren't just dealing with, the person that can say yes, no, yes, I do use that. That's correct, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's essentially that brings you to the nomas of digital natives and digital immigrants and that sort of thing. The whole thing about the fact that some people grow up with technology, some people don't grow up with technology, some people can and can't use it for different reasons, as you just mentioned. Health related and all sorts of things. But that also brings me into games, which is where we talked about full circle before. Coming back into games, which was game design and that sort of thing for people in health related areas. I don't currently work in that, but it's one of the areas I have worked in before. Being part of one of my jobs was in aged care, so it's watching what people were doing with stroke rehabilitation and some of these smart city materials that they were working with, sensors and things like that, putting them into people that were sundowning and that sort of thing. People, so they made working with keeping people safe in independent living units, those sort of things. Yes. So specifically for people who were actually sundowning, and they were putting in sensors and everything to keep them safe, but where they could, essentially live normal lives. The technology is fantastic, but you have to work with these people all the time, and they're not going to give you the same answers as people who don't have those conditions.
What then do you think is the message that you would like to get across about women in STEM and about women in technology generally? What's the message do you think science communication should really be putting out there?
Women in STEM and women in tech, well, two completely different things for me, I think. But women in, I guess, the main general message that I want women, I guess, for science communication to put out for women in sciences in general and anything across the STEM spectrum is that to just jump in. You can have a plan or not. Literally just feel your way. Most of the success stories I hear in any of the STEM fields is that you find out what works for you once you're in there. You don't necessarily have to have a plan. If that makes your blood run cold, fine. Just have a plan. That's fine. It's not a problem if you're a planner, all good. But most of the success stories I find, you end up somewhere where you don't expect to be. I certainly did not expect from playing LucasArts games and things like that to be where I am now. I'll talk about that with you in a little bit anyway. But basically, I didn't expect to be where I am now, even when I started my PhD 2.5 years ago. I've literally come full circle, and I'm really happy with where I am right now. But yeah, I hear of other people that started doing science in another field and ended up in a completely other end of the STEM spectrum somewhere, and they're really happy with where they've ended up as well. It's one of those sort of things where it's such a huge lot of fields, that I think you're going to end up finding what you kind of like to do once you're there. And I think that's the key message we need to get across. Don't pigeonhole yourself too early. I think that's the key thing. And in tech, probably as a microcosm as well, similar thing. Don't expect that you're going to like one thing. You're probably going to like a lot of things, and don't forget that technology is not one field. Technology is in everything. And if you decide that down the track you like, I don't know, criminology or something like that, you're going to find tech in everything. You turn around, you sneeze, and there's technology. I mean, seriously, you can. It's one of those sort of things, you look around, everywhere you look, you've got a phone in your pocket, right? I mean, you've got something you can do with technology. So, it's one of those sort of things where, don't expect you're going to be on a help desk. Don't expect that you have to make apps, or you have to program, or you have to do this. Just give it a go and work out what you like to do. That's the message, I think.
So given that you're talking about kind of what you're doing now, let's get into that. What are you doing now?
Sure. Oh, wow. So many things. But so alongside the PhD, so like I mentioned, the PhD is in human-computer interaction. So I am specifically looking at how to better involve people back into the design of technology. And I'm looking more in the education in the education spectrum, and using how science communication can work into that. So it isn't a science communication based thing. It is actually a methodology based type of PhD. But to do that, what I'm actually bringing back is the performing arts. So I haven't actually ever taken a break from that. It's not something that it's always, this is what I mean about full circle. None of it has ever gone away. It's something I'll probably always do. There's a lot of things I'm also doing on the side that I can't talk about right now in terms of my performing arts, but some very cool, exciting things that are not related to my science. Stay tuned. Stay tuned on social media.
Yeah, that's intriguing, isn't it?
Very much so. But at the same time, is that on the science front, what I'm also doing is, as you already know, as we work on things outside of this, but obviously I do podcasts. And so science communication, what I try to do, and it's a bit like the message I just gave, which was, just try, see what happens. Try and see what works for you. Is what we've been doing is podcasting, live streaming, essentially. So I mentioned live theatre was always a really good way to reach people in the first episode. So what I tried to do was look at what other people were doing in science communication, and there's lots of live shows, and they work really well, obviously. Some really, really high tech, usually high cost, unfortunately, shows where it takes a lot of planning, a lot of money, and a lot of time to actually put together a science show. Think Brian Cox, for example, and all those big shows that they tour the world, and all that sort of stuff. And they're very effective. They are super effective. They're fantastic. Usually you need big names and all that sort of thing, but they're very high cost. That sort of thing.
Yeah, he had some ridiculous giant screen thing, didn't he?
He did, absolutely. And look, let's be fair. Astronomers, and if there's any of them listening, and I know there's a few that are, fantastic. I love your field, and they're beautiful, and the photos are great, and you're all amazing, and I absolutely love astronomy. I'm a stargazer. I love it. Fantastic. But it's not the only science. So, but the thing is that, and they know that, it's not a dig. But the thing is that it's still very spectacular. It's going to make a great show. Astronomy it's in a package. It's fantastic. Who doesn't want to see stars and nebula, and oh my God, it's great. It makes a fantastic live show. But what are you going to do with tech? That's the big question. So you can get a screen out, and you can, this is the thing. You got to look at, the first thing that comes to mind is stereotypes. You got robots, and you've got games, and I don't know, like, this is the thing, like, what do you show people? How do you feel like an hour and a half or 2 hours or something? There's no big explosions, like, unless it's in a game, or this is the thing. Robot it's really explosions. Hard to do. Yeah, robot wars. I don't know. It's how do you do it? This is the thing. It's really hard to do. So yeah, it's a different kettle of fish. And maths, I'm assuming, has the same problem. Engineering, engineering, you could probably knock over buildings and things. There's certain things you can do to keep people entertained. But yeah, it's a really tough thing to do. But astronomy and things like that, they've got built-in entertainment factor, 100%, already good. So I literally had to look at how I could maybe engage people. So I looked around, and I looked at how other tech people were trying to engage, and you've got places like Twitch, for example. So Twitch, for everybody else, is a live streaming platform for gamers, and it's very much not a science communication platform in general, but it is where some people get well, it's very much where a lot of people make a lot of money. But you've got people that make that are professional gamers or esports people, and they go on and some people make very big names for themselves in terms of they play games and they play games very well. It's very entertaining. I found myself getting sucked in quite a lot as a viewer. But yeah, you can follow different channels. It's basically live theatre on the go, 24 hours a day. Any game you want to see, you just turn it on by category, and there's somebody playing it. If the streamer is not engaging, generally that takes everything away. I won't watch something if the streamer's not engaging. That's how it works. So you really have to be on and playing a role, or at least on and being engaging somehow. So it's quite it's a really interesting phenomenon. And there's others, of course, of YouTube and other platforms as well, and they all do them. But I thought, what about science communication? Some people do some different live shows and things, but there was very little science communication going on. So over time, for our last few months, there's a few other people such as Carly Noon and Crystal DiNapoli. I'll just drop their names there. We've been doing little bits and pieces, including games as well, because we try to bring in the audience that are already there, which are there for games, into some science communication with what I call a bit of a different spin. So Carly and Crystal and I play games. So we do some podcasty type stuff. Started on my birthday in January, doing some promo for things like Deadly Science, which I'll do another plug for. So we started doing something a little different, and then we gamed at the same time as talking to people about the benefits of Deadly Science and what they were doing for remote communities. And we found that people were flocking, which was really interesting. So from that, I started my own channel, and I started talking to people. And I found that instead of having to do big shows, like, high cost things, the only cost I have is my setup. I'm sitting in front of it right now talking to you. And I find that all I have to do is I'm sitting there, and over time I've built this community that comes to me, and then people come and we talk about things over games, and it is tech-based. So we talk about game design and the importance of game design and what goes into human-computer interaction. And sometimes we just talk about science in general. And we just talk. And by that, I mean, I talk over live stream, and people talk in the chat back to me. And we actually just have conversations around science while I game.
Yeah, so, which just sounds like a brilliant idea.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think that would be I thought it would be appropriate for the channel, but I didn't think it would be effective. But what I'm finding is it's actually super effective.
Yeah, you've been surprised with how popular it's been.
Yeah, like super, super, super popular. I mean, obviously there's been some negatives, which we can go into if you like, but there's certainly, there's definitely, I'm actually super surprised. I'm building a model out of it, which is really interesting. But I'm calling it conversational science communication. So live stream conversational science communication. It seems to be amazingly effective. Yeah.
And in terms of your actual field, the human-computer interaction, what do you think are the most kind of interesting developments in that field, and where do you see it going?
Oh, wow. There's just developments every day. Yeah, it's one of the fastest moving fields. I guess the good thing about this field, is that the theorems and the theories we use, they're fairly steadfast. They're the same sort of theories that we've always used, because I mean, humans change, technology changes all the time, but the way humans approach things, that's less changeable. So I guess, so I guess some of the approaches that we're taking to things like AI are very interesting. I guess you touched on that a little bit as well, but I mean, we're going to have to be careful how we go about ethically interacting with AI, I guess, or designing AI going forward. And I'm not one of these people that thinks we're going to have Skynet, taking over very quickly or anything like that.
I'm glad you got that in.
I mean, you can't say AI without mentioning Skynet. So, but look, I'm not one to say it won't happen though. Because we're not all
it's a bit like the CERN creating a black hole kind of thing, isn't it? Like there's a possibility there, but it doesn't mean that that's the most likely outcome.
True. I suppose so. Yeah. I guess it's one of those sort of things where I don't know whether or not it's physically impossible to create a black hole through CERN. I guess it probably is, but sorry, I'm not a physicist, but I assume it probably is possible. But it's 100% possible. Well, this is really they're gonna hate on me. They're gonna hate on me.
Are we going back to the mass phobia thing here?
No, we're going back to the 100% being hung, drawn, and quartered by my colleagues. But it's very, 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 very possible that we're going to have a Skynet if we let it happen. But it comes down to whether or not you have the faith in the humans to not do that. I guess it comes down to that, and that's where my field comes in. I guess, yeah, I would like to be able to see that we have. I would like to think that we have the moral capacity not to let that happen. But we've got some exciting things happening. Some fantastic work that I've been involved in, and to watch happening also in my periphery with reinforcement learning in AI and things like that for games. That again, Secret Lab and I will present at PAX again this year, PAX AI and PAX Australia, in 2021 in October. But yeah, reinforcement learning in games is fantastic with AI. Obviously, that's not the only thing that's happening in AI, but there's lots and lots of things happening in AI. But
when you say reinforcement learning, what do you mean there?
Yeah. So just one of the ways that people can train AI. I do direct people to. I'll give you the link to if you're interested in the video of the panel that we did in 2019. It is quite funny. But you can put it there for your podcast listeners if they're interested. But
so is that the idea then, as you play a game, that the AI learns how you play to kind of counteract what you do a bit more, or is that something else?
No. Not specifically. This is about how you actually train the AI itself. So this is more about the approach. The approach we're talking about is actually training the AI itself. So before you get it into the game, but we do talk about obviously how it interacts in the game as well. But the actual training of an AI, the AI asset to go into the game itself, it needs to be able to learn somehow how to maneuver itself, within a game environment, how to. So essentially, it needs to work out if there's obstacles in its way. For example, how is it going to learn the right way to do things? For example, so you have to train an algorithm. So in this way, one of the ways is reinforcement learning. So we called it the Minties approach, which is essentially the Minties approach. The Minties, as in like the lollies. If it does something right, you give it a Minty. If it does something wrong, you take that Minty away.
Brilliant.
So it's like obviously it's gonna do something to get more minties. It's not gonna like negative minties. So that is the reinforcement learning approach in a nutshell.
Yeah, it's like the Pavlov's dog thing.
That's right.
Yeah, excellent.
high tech. Reinforcement learning in a nutshell. Yeah. So, but yeah, there's lots of stuff. But I mean, this isn't brand new stuff. This isn't future facing necessarily. It's happening now. But yeah, I mean, human computer interaction is just something that I think that at least in my area, one of the biggest things is going to be, how we, how do we involve users right from the start? How do we involve the users, ethically designing technology with users all the way through, so that we do know that the technology that we're designing is going to actually meet the need going forward. Yeah, we're not actually designing for the users, we're designing with the users. Yep.
Yeah, which is a really interesting distinction. I've spent a good bit of time kind of working in mental health and things like that, where you talk about service user involvement, and it's that idea that you design services with the people involved who will be receiving the services in some way. So I guess it's kind of a similar idea, but how do you go about the with part of that in technology? I think that's something I'm finding very difficult to imagine how you would actually put that into practice.
Yeah, and it is super difficult because it comes down to again, sort of that triple threat of cost, cost, time, and scope, because that's part of the sorry. Cost, time, and scope, because it does come down to that thing about the whole reason why we default to that designing for a user instead of with a user, is that we kind of take we take what we call sort of the avatar approach, which is that we use just either a subset or a persona approach to design, which means that if we interview or survey 100 people, and we call that group one, and we call that okay, that's going to be represented by this type of persona, student.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas we may have interviewed or surveyed 100 people with 100 different attitudes about a different type of technology.
Mm-hmm.
That's not accurate. So, it's a great idea, and you use that particular persona all the way through. It's still not designing with the users. It's still designing only for the users. It's not. It cuts down on the cost of using the humans, or the 100 humans, but it certainly doesn't. It doesn't solve your problem. It certainly just to me, it compounds your problem. What I'm looking at is, you've got technology, you're designing technology, obviously with trying to get people to come along for the ride to design technology, but people are forgetting that you can use technology in order to design technology. It's really quite interesting.
But that's what Skynet would do.
Ooh, I like it. Oh, I'm renaming my thesis. The Skynet method. What do you call it? The Skynet approach. Sure.
Skynet Minty approach.
Oh, the Skynet Minty approach. Oh, I like it. Maybe it's a paper. Maybe it's a paper. I like it. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking at particular ways we can maybe interject using technology to involve the users all the way through, whether that's even basic things like Zoom.
Yeah,
I know it sounds a bit weird, but
Meredith, unfortunately, I've got up to a time where we need to start wrapping this up. But you've mentioned and hinted at a few kind of projects you've got going on there. So can you tell people how they can find out more about what you do and the various exciting projects that you're involved in?
Sure. So all the social medias, I'm not very creative with the name, so you can just follow me using my name. It's just Meredith Castles, all one word. So you can probably link them in your episode if you like.
Yep.
And on Facebook, the official page is just Meredith Castles PhD, just with PhD at the end for the official science page. The Twitch channel is just twitch.tv/Meredith Castles. Again, just my name, no spaces. All good. But I also am part of the podcasting crew for That's What I Call Science. And you can find us on all major podcasting platforms as well.
Meredith, that's been really informative, really fun conversation. Thanks very much.
No trouble at all, Lee. Great to talk to you.
I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode and enjoyed Curiosity Cake in general. Thanks again for listening. Take care of yourselves and bye for now.
Curiosity Cake.